Hi, everyone. Art for Everyone podcast, where the guy that doesn't know too much about it. But you know what? Week one, it was probably not a lot of know about art. Now I feel like I'm pretty much expert compared to Michael as an artist that's been in the industry for a long period of time. Thank you guys for listening. Michael, you want to talk about our current guest today?
Yeah, and I mean, I heard and I've seen your confidence grow in the past couple weeks, and it's funny because I almost feel like you have more confidence in this field than I do. Like I've been doing this for decades, and I still feel like a newbie every single day. But today, our guest is going to be Rue Russell, and we're going to talk about her artistic journey. We're also going to talk about how to price your art. But as you know, we have a subtopic, but we kind of just go in whichever direction we want because we get to know our artists and we like the conversation to be organic. And Rue is an artist who I just, from the time that I first messaged her about being on the show to a couple weeks later, I watched your Instagram just explode. Like your numbers went way up. So go ahead and introduce yourself and then we'll get into all this other stuff.
Hi, I am Rue Russell. I am an abstract artist and I'm so happy and excited to be here. Thank you for having me, both of you.
So first, I want to know, what did you do on Instagram? Because I watched you jump up like 25% in a couple weeks.
I just stayed consistent. I used trending sounds. That is a huge thing. I remember I actually used your sound.
That's how I found you originally.
Yeah, that was my very first art reel ever, was using your sound.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm so honored. I feel so privileged by that.
So it was just, I think it was just those things, just remaining consistent, paying attention to what works and sticking with it. But yeah.
All right, I'm gonna some of those. So I looked at Rue's Instagram, right? So she has the artwork. She has like fitness go on. If you're listening right now, go into like the show notes, you can see Rue's all her stuff. And so Michael has a lot of his artwork, working out, his shirt off, right? Question for both.
Most of the shirt off stuff's on the OnlyFans these days.
It's pretty much still on the Instagram too. But okay, now what are your guys' take? Because we've had a lot of relatively, I think, fit artists on this platform. Do you think it plays a factor in how much a picture would sell if, let's say, the artist was overweight and putting their stuff out there? Would they have to sell it different? I mean, I don't know. It kind of popped to me today because I was like looking and I was like, I know, Michael, you put a lot of that stuff, and then Rue, it looks like from at least with the picture, the workout stuff, and I don't know, does it play a factor? Do you know a lot of like overweight like artists, or I don't
know? Me? Do I know a lot of overweight?
No, I'm just saying both of you guys.
I know a variety of artists, you know.
So you do know some overweight ones?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I think that for me, and we talked about this on the episode with Autumn, is that sometimes physicality can be utilized as a marketing. It's used in every industry as a marketing tool, or can be. But for me, yes, it is utilized as a marketing tool. Mm-hmm. But for me, I see it more as part of my artistic journey, as part of my process, because the act of painting, and I was thinking about this the other day, there are gym workouts, but the physicality of painting sometimes it's incredible. Like if you spend an entire day painting or hours painting, you can get this tremendous soreness. Like it is an absolute workout. And
Rue doesn't believe you. Look at her.
No, I completely agree. I think I'd have to say my back, though. My back like takes a toll tremendously for me. So I'm in pain now. So
I think that a big part of my process involves me having to lean over my paintings, and people are like, your back is going to be so bad one day. And I'm like, well, it already hurts all the time, but that's why I generally do a lot of deadlifts and stuff like that. Like right now I'm sort of working my way back from an accident, so I'm somewhat limited in what I can do. But I mean, absolutely. But I also look at the mentality behind it in terms of, sometimes I feel like, I'm stuck. I don't want to create. I don't know what to do. And just like a lot of days I wake up and it's rainy outside, it's gray, I don't want to go work out. But sometimes you have to do the difficult thing. And sometimes the best way to get into the mode of working out is you've got to warm your body up. So what I tell artists is if you ever feel like you're in a creative block, like you can't do something, maybe you just need to warm yourself up. Maybe do a little bit of priming, maybe do a little bit of color mixing, maybe rearrange your studio. You just got to warm the muscles up, and you turn these habits into rituals, and it allows you to kind of work through those difficult times, because you do sometimes need to do stuff when you don't want to if you want to make a living as an artist.
Don't know where to take that. We're going with that. Hey, Rue. So, all right. Look at that. She's loving it already. So, what do you? How often are you thinking about? Okay, what am I going to post? Is it like a game plan of like, all right, I got this week. I got to hit up something about myself, something about the art, something about this, or is it just as they come?
I try to keep a schedule. I have a book that I keep, and it's like a list of content ideas. I'm still working on a proper schedule as far as, I've noticed that some artists or content creators, you'll see art, then fitness, then food, art, fitness, food, art, and they actually have a pattern. But right now for me, mine is it's all scattered all over the place. But like I said, I'm working towards having a better structure with all of the content ideas that I have, and narrowing down what it is necessarily that I would like to portray for my brand, beyond just being an artist. But yes, I have a whole book, and I've been working on a better structure and a schedule for myself.
You really hit on something there, though, because our lives as artists can be very interesting, and those things can work their way into the art, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So I think that as artists, we sometimes are given more liberties, and people want to see into our lives the things that we do. So I think sometimes as artists, we may have content that's a little more scattered or a little more varied, because maybe at one point in our life, we're a little more focused on different things as our interests start to shift. So I think that you're absolutely right in terms of how a structure can definitely help with discipline. And I know that you're former military, so we can talk about that too, because one of our other guests recently, Jason Humphrey's former military. So we're seeing a lot of artists transition from military careers to full-time artist careers. So I want to dive into that in a little bit too, because it's interesting. And I think that there are a lot of people maybe making that shift.
Of course.
Well, I mean, because how long were you in the military for, Rue?
I did 4.5 years.
So how long do you have to be in the military to get like some kind of retirement? Is it like 10 years like that, or how long?
Yes, you do have to hit double digits, 10 years.
10 years.
In order to hit, to collect a retirement from the military, from the Army itself.
Okay. So, but you still get like the college paid for and things like that if you wanted to do that, right?
You do.
I wonder if it's, I mean, in the art, and you guys, I don't know your thoughts on it. So I would see the ones that are double digits, right, where they're getting kind of like a paycheck every month or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so it's easier for them to probably take the adventure of being an artist, right? Because you probably don't get paid right off the back. I mean, a lot of the artists we've talked to, it at least takes them a little bit of time before they start selling their paintings.
Of course. So you don't necessarily have to hit double digits to follow your dreams as an artist. You have two different retirements in the military. You have the retirement where you hit the double digits.
Yeah.
And then you have medical retirement. Medical retirement is where your funds will come from the Veteran Affairs. So then that'll also give you a chance to follow your dreams as an artist as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've seen that people in like the real estate field, where a lot of like military jump into the real estate field. I mean, again, at least talking to them, it's like it's going to take a little while. That first paycheck is probably going to be a couple months out. So you at least have that kind of buffer. You're going to get some kind of paycheck every month. So you're not stressing, I guess, as much of getting like a 9-to-5 job. You can follow your dream. So yeah, it's nice.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, Vinnie, because there was not saying you were implying this, but some people might logically think that, oh, well, you've been doing the art thing for a while, you start to have regular income. And it's like, yeah, I get little tidbits from Facebook and Instagram
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and I get small residuals and royalties off of some of my licensing deals. But sometimes you have to wait for quarterly periods for some of those things, and sometimes those amounts may drop to something that is I don't want to say insubstantial, but not enough to cover California rent levels. And particularly here in California, we kind of had a rough year, and the economy got hit. And when the economy gets hit, we've talked about this, how art's often the first thing that people cut out of their budget. So the art sales have been dramatically down for me lately. And I might have some stuff coming up. I'm always kind of playing. And the truth is that I always know that I can flip the script at any time. So that's what I love about this. It's like I could be deep in a hole, but if I can have just a good little stretch, I can sometimes generate enough revenue to cover me for extended periods of time. But, it can put a lot of stress on a person. And if you have a family, if you have children, dependents, stuff like that, if you have a significant other, there's a lot of variables involved in this profession of being an artist, if that's the route you choose to take. And so I think that's kind of a good segue into pricing artwork, because one of the things I most commonly hear from artists is, well, how do I start pricing my artwork? And that's the big question.
What's your thoughts, Rue?
Whew, OMG. When it came to, I'm sorry, my animal. She needed some attention as well. But when it first came to pricing my artwork, I had such a terrible time. Because, a part of you wants to, is just, this is, something that I'm doing for, at the time for me, it was just a hobby, something to express myself. And it was something that I loved, I enjoyed. And, when people were like, oh, I want to buy your artwork. It was just, I was like, okay, $60. And, I was giving away my artwork for less than what I spent on the materials. And it wasn't until the year before last, when I really started, getting into the art community here in Atlanta, and I started asking questions and doing research. And now, I've had to play with, how I price my paintings. But I think now I'm finally at a point where, I'm comfortable with it. And I base my pricing off of the hours spent, the material cost. I also include shipping as well.
I think that that was kind of a similar theme. I think we've heard mostly, where it's basically how much time you put into it is kind of the cost associated with it.
Well, I think there's an infinite spectrum of ways you can do it, but I think that there's two really, really popular methods. And one is the time and materials. So your materials plus whatever you decide you want to charge hourly. The other really popular method is square footage. So square foot or square inch type of rate. But there are a lot of variables involved. And Rue kind of hit on a couple things there. Of a couple years ago, she mentioned that she was kind of just doing it for fun. And when we're doing it for fun, there's no pressure on us. We're just making the stuff we want to make. And when somebody says, hey, I want that, it's really validating. It just makes us feel good. So a lot of times we're just happy that somebody would be willing to put that up. We were not even thinking about money at that time. We're just like, oh, somebody likes something that I made. That's pretty cool. So a lot of times early on, we will just, be like, okay, like, well, what do you feel is fair? What do you want to give me for that? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if you decide you just want to do art as a hobby, completely okay. And if you decide you want to price your work low, you want to price it high, it's completely up to you. There's no right or wrong answer, because our art ultimately is priceless. But if you want to make a living doing this, if you want to sell your art, you're going to have to put a price tag on it. So we'll go back and forth. We'll talk to Rue a little bit more about her pricing method, but let's back up a little bit, because I think that one of the things we need to talk about is for artists that are just trying to sell or looking to sell their art, what types of things should you take into consideration? And so some of the advice that I would give young artists, and this is kind of what I did, was when I was just looking to start selling my work, I would look at other artists out there who were at about a similar experience and skill level, kind of the similar style of work, I'd look at works that were similar in size to mine, and I would look at their pricing. Now, that doesn't mean that I had to or that you have to use that, but it at least kind of gives you a baseline, because there are a lot of variables like, do you work with galleries? Do you have prints available for your work? Do you have to ship your work? Are you shipping internationally? So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll dive into some of that. But I figured we kind of start off there with some of the basics for if you're just looking to get started, how you might go about doing it.
I mean, I think it's similar when you're pricing a property. I mean, if there's comparable properties to yours, right? You say, okay, this is kind of easier to get the idea of it. But when there's uniqueness to it, like a unique property, right? You get a gauge of where it's at, but then over time you start going to get a gut feeling of where you can sell it at, right? You're going to probably know, hey, this piece right here that I have could probably sell for more. I feel like there's more in this one compared to that one right there. The public's going to like it more. So I think you start learning that over time, I would think, in the art world, just like in the real estate world.
Yeah, kind of. I think in real estate, though, it's like if you just try to take a $10,000 property and call it a $3 million property, people are gonna be like, what are you doing? And sometimes we say that in California, because you look at California rates and it's just like, what the hell is going on here? Like the amount they're trying to charge for stuff.
Well, it's not really the $10,000 properties. It's a $3 million to $20 million property or $25 million property, right? There, like, you can look at basically a $3 million property and a $7 million property, or maybe like a $4 million property and like $8 million property, something like that, right? And you start breaking down the numbers, the square footage of the property, bedrooms, things like that. And sometimes you're like, there's not a lot of logic in why this property sold for this one to that one. It's more off, okay, there's that feel of it. Okay, maybe it might have had a little better of view. That street was probably a little better right there, that, right? Sometimes when you're talking about those kind of numbers, it's not really, the price is not really the end all be all. It's just like someone really fell in love with that property and you're able to get that price.
Well, and you hit on something there, Vinny, though, because somebody decided this is the value of this, and somebody else is deciding I'm willing to pay that. And that very much correlates with the art industry. Mm-hmm. What are people willing to pay for it? And what are you willing to let it go for?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to that thing that we talked about where you had that painting, it wasn't selling, you raised the price because you said it felt more valuable, and you ended up selling it right after that. Like, I mean, it's so true.
Does that happen in real estate where you may have a property that's at a certain value that's not selling and you just escalate the pricing to sort of convey in a psychological sense that there's more value to it? Or
agents do that. I mean, people that don't know better know. You can see it. You're like, oh man, the reason why they raised it is they're getting so much interest in the property, so they had to raise the price, and now they're gonna go for it. Like, there's games like that played all the time. I mean, it's a psychological thing, right? I mean, same thing. I'm guessing the art world. The tough part about it is I would think in the art world, right? You buy off the real estate in an emotional feel. You buy off the artwork in an emotional feel. But there's a finite amount of land that you have, at least in like Southern California, certain areas. I don't think there's a finite number of canvases out there, right? So if, like, let's say I miss out on a painting that I really liked of yours, Michael or Rue, right? I can say, okay, they might have something better that I'm gonna like in 7 months from now or a year from now, right? Compared to a designer that's an architect like that is building a property, I might have to wait 5 years, 10 years to get another of his properties, I guess. I don't know. So it's a little bit, I guess, different in that sense.
Possibly. I mean, an artist may decide that they're not going to make more work for a period of time, or they may not make something as good, or they may make a different body of work and shift away from that. So you never really know. So I think that you're kind of touching on something important, though, of like, hey, buy up the artwork now because you don't know what's going to come tomorrow. Like, Rue, you may decide tomorrow that you want to completely move to a different body of work and leave something behind, and that could be the end of that, and perhaps that escalates the value of those pieces, or maybe you bump up the prices of the pieces from that collection.
I never would have thought of trying that in seeing if that works, bumping up the prices. I'm actually going to try that and see and see how that works. That's quiet. I like that tact, going that route.
Well, I think I want to be fair with artists, and I want to say that ultimately it comes down to you deciding what the value of your work is. If you don't feel like your work should be sold at a certain price, if you feel like it should be more, then it should be more. And if you feel like, hey, I like my work, but I really want to give it to the people, and I feel like you're not taking advantage of them. But if you just decide, hey, in my heart and my soul, I want to make it more accessible to people. Like, a lot of my work is about struggle. And so a lot of people that support my work are people that are struggling, and sometimes financially. So it's like, I want to make it work for people. If that means doing payment plans or working on the price, like, I want to make it work for people, because I want people that care about and connect with my work to have it. But I also don't want to diminish my value, because I got to try to keep a roof over my head. But that is something that has happened in the past, where I had pieces at a certain price range, like a certain set structure, and they were in galleries, and maybe they weren't moving for a little while. And I had to have conversations with the galleries, like, hey, do we want to bump this up? Do we want to bump it down? And a lot of times I'm very hesitant to bump down, because inflation, cost of living, does it ever go down? No, it never goes down. And is our time less valuable in those times where we're really having to hustle? Absolutely not. So sometimes you can bump your prices up, and it can convey this thing to just click psychologically in somebody's head to make it seem like it's more valuable. Like, I had a piece that was at, I think it was somewhere in the range of like 1,000 to 3,000, and it wasn't selling for that. So then I bumped it up to like 10 times that, and it sold for that higher price point. So not able to sell it at the lower price point. And I decided, you know what, I wouldn't want to really sell it for this price point anyway. So I bumped it up and said, you know what, when it sells, but this is what I feel the value is. So sometimes when people recognize, like, oh, that's what the value should be, I see that value in it. Maybe there's a misalignment. So maybe at the lower price point, people were feeling this misalignment with the value of what I was creating. So it's an interesting thing in the art industry.
So do you think that would work does that tact only work based upon your audience? Will that work for every audience necessarily?
No, I don't think so at all. Because there are people that are always going to want deals. There's people that are always going to want discounts. So just like there's an entire spectrum for artists in the artwork that's created, there's an entire spectrum for the buying audience. And go ahead, Vinnie.
No, but it's also too, right? I mean, like, it could work with all audiences. It's whatever tact you use, right? Like, why is Black Friday such a big event, right? It's the markdowns, right? Oh, you're saving 40%. But if you look at some of those numbers, they've actually hiked the price up a couple weeks before, a month before, and then they're reducing the price, so it looks like it's a drastic drop. So if, like, you're selling a painting at, I don't know, $3,000, whatever it is, but you raise it at $10,000, then you go, hey, you know what? You got a week. We just reduced it by 70%. 70%. Like, you're gonna have some people are gonna buy just off of, man, that's some value right there. I'm saving 70%.
Well, and some people actually don't like it when there's steep discounts on art, because they're like, why is there a steep discount on that? So one of my galleries right now is actually running a holiday sale, and they said, hey, Michael, do you want to participate? Do you want to have a discount? And I said, sure, we can try that. Let's see if we can, move a little bit of extra work. But I have not seen anything move. But I would not be surprised, based on my experience, if come January, when prices bump back up to regular pricing, if they sell at the regular pricing when they would not sell at the discounted price. So sometimes when there's a discount, it makes people, again, psychologically say, well, why is there a discount? And some people love a deal, and some people will take advantage of a deal. But I'm having somebody come by tomorrow to drop some stuff off, and he was talking to me the other day. He said, hey, I saw that your gallery's running a sale, and I saw the one piece that I like. I saw that it's been marked down to $3,300, and it was $4,500. And, we're kind of struggling right now, but honestly, we'd rather buy it for the $4,500. And, it was interesting because I found out what he was looking at. And because he's followed me for a long time, this isn't a deal that I have to run through the gallery. So when he comes tomorrow, I'm going to see if I can work out a deal with him, maybe put him on a payment plan, something like that. But it was very telling for him to say, oh, I didn't notice that it was on sale, but quite honestly, I would rather pay the larger amount for it.
Okay, well, that's a rare situation. I mean, rarely are people going to say, I would rather pay more money for what they're going to say, like, I don't know. I think maybe the aspect of they have a lot of money to spend, right?
No, they don't. But I think that sometimes small businesses and people that are entrepreneurs, people that have had to hustle, they appreciate the hustle in other people. So it's like a lot of times artists that support other artists may not want to buy something at a discounted rate. They may want to give them the full value because they recognize how hard the life is and how hard the struggle is.
Well, I mean, I think for a person like that, as a business owner myself, I would think instead of even, I mean, you take the full price, of course, more money in your pocket. But if he's willing to pay that $1,000 more, say, hey, you know what? Instead of that $1,000, you can buy. I'll give you this price, but maybe you can help me get my word out there. If you can help me sell X amount of more paintings, whatever, right, to your people, whatever, that's going to bring more value to you over time than basically that extra. I mean, $1,000. I would think.
Absolutely. And I know where you're going with that too, because I'm a big believer in over delivering. Yeah. So when I talked to him, because he was going to just bring me a little Christmas gift. And so I was going to give him something anyway. And then we started talking about the painting. But I will always give people extra gifts. So I always give people more than they expect. So it's like, yeah, there's a price tag for my experience. Because that's what it is at buying art. It's an experience, but there's always more than just the painting you're getting with it. You're getting a certificate of authenticity. Maybe there's some memorabilia, like a signed brush or something like that. Maybe there's an extra painting or something like that too. So yes, when you are getting a little more, it does allow you to give back a little bit more too. So that's one of the things that happens when you do have a little more abundance and more resources. And when you have higher price points, is it gives you the flexibility to really kind of take care of people a little bit more too.
That is true.
Now, Rue, you mentioned that you have kind of made the transition in the past couple of years into making this more of a full-time venture. So you mentioned doing some of your research. So were some of the things that I mentioned, were those some of the things that you looked at in terms of like other artists, maybe that were showing in galleries with similar styles and sizes, things like that? Or what type of research did you do?
I researched how other artists were pretty much charging for their paintings. I asked fellow artists that I met at other art shows. There was another book that I read as well. It's been a few. It may be the wrong book because I read a few. Jeez, I'm gonna have to look it up. Someone had recommended the book, and it gave a breakdown of how the artists charged for their paintings as well. It was a lot more complex than how I charge for mine, but it did help me find the guidelines to how I wanted to charge for mine, because I was just like, oh my God, all these numbers is too much.
Sometimes those formulas, they get complicated because you can easily overthink this pricing of the art thing. And that's why sometimes it's nice to just be like, you know what, I don't even want to keep track of hours. So for me, a lot of times what I'll use as a baseline is like for the work I'm doing right now, which is very organic and flowing, I'll use a baseline price for standard works of around $300 a square foot for mid-size works. So say it's a 3 foot by 3 foot piece. So 9 square feet times 300, $2,700. Now, one thing that I'm doing, it's something that you mentioned, is I will a lot of times do free shipping. Now, I have to ship a lot of my works nationally, like across the country or even internationally, and I use a professional crater and shipper. So I'll have him pick up the work, he'll professionally package it, he'll insure it, he'll ship it out, but that gets really expensive. So I took kind of the data in my head from my experience over the years of how much that costs. And so sometimes I'll use that square footage price, but then kind of add a certain amount to cover the crating and shipping across the country. And then if it happens to be something that's sold locally, well, I just pocket a little bit more money on that. And if it happens to ship internationally, then I make a little less money on that.
Okay.
Rue, question for you.
Yes.
All right. How many, and this is a safe space. How many times has it come across your mind, you might not have said anything, where you've seen an artist and you see that painting price that they're trying to charge, and you're like, that person must be out of their mind. There's no way they're going to get that price. See, that laughter means it's true. It's happened. Come on, Rue. How many times has that happened?
You know what? It literally just happened 2 days ago, but I try not to judge other artists because I try to think about, you know what? I don't know what she or he was feeling in that moment. Maybe their emotion, the energy that they put into that painting is worth $1 million. Who am I to say? But it was a circle. It was a lined circle, just a circle with a plain beige background. There was no texture. And it was $1,200. Huh?
Was it an established artist, or do you not know?
I do not know. I think I was too baffled at the price. I probably should have researched the artist right then and there, but when I saw the price, I was stuck. And I was trying to find, most of the time they have the information, maybe a little bit about the painting or the artist. But I was trying to find out about the artist just to see, or about the painting.
What is this?
Yes. Like, why is it, $1,200? I'm not mad. But it was, yes, I had that moment. I did.
And I have no doubt from my time in the industry that there are probably people that have walked into the gallery that have looked at my work and have been like, why in the fuck does it cost that much? And then there are probably people that are saying, conversely, why does it only cost that much? Mm-hmm. So art hits people in different ways. And if it's a piece that's really close to you, like you're really connected to it, and you're like, look, I don't feel like I really need to sell it. But if I am going to sell it, I'm going to make sure that I, get what I want for it. And so that's kind of my, like, I do have, like I mentioned, my standardized pricing method of like the square footage plus X, but I do have what I call my marquee pieces that are often double or triple. And it's because those pieces are, I feel like, the cream of the crop for me. And if those don't sell for a long time, then when I get a big museum show or a big gallery show, I'm going to have this work available. And if I don't have it available, it's because it's sold for this price point. So I do occasionally look at individual pieces and assign them extra value if I feel like it's a real special piece within the collection type of thing, and deviate from those.
All right. So this is for both of you guys, and I guess right here. Okay. So correlate this to real estate and to art, right? So an appraisal on a property, to be honest with you, most appraisers, especially when you're under contract, just find the way to get the value to come in at the price that you're under contract to, right? They're not trying to like find out actually what the true value of it. They're finding what's odd thing, right? So how many do you think appraisers of art, right, without knowing the price of your painting, Michael's painting, that kind of stuff, do you think it would actually come up with like pretty close to what the price of that painting is being sold for?
Well, for me, and this is an interesting thing because I actually at one time sought out an art appraiser because I did want to get some of my work appraised, because if you're a professional artist, it kind of makes sense, like get your work appraised. But I came to find out that, and this was years ago, so it may be more now, but it was going to be several $100s per piece. And even if you have the work appraised, what they're essentially going to do is they're going to look at your history, they're going to look at your gallery sales, things like that. And it's going to be in line with that. So I started to realize there was really no point in me appraising the work, because that's what people are really going to do if they want to find out the value of your work. Is you can go look up Edelman Fine Art or Sparks Gallery, and you can look at the general pricing of the works there and kind of see what the work is selling at in the market.
What about you, Rue? You think they would be pretty good?
I am honestly, I'm going to have to be honest with you guys. I never in a million years considered having my art appraised. I just wrote it down. It's something that I need to have done. As I said, I'm still learning a lot. So this is something that I have to now do and learn and process and see, how that entire process works.
Well, let me tell you, you may not need to, because it is a big dump of money. So let me ask you. So a lot of times what we do on this show is we're kind of getting to know the guests with the audience. So you've been doing this for a couple years. So it sounds like, have you been doing a lot of this just on your own, or have you?
Yes,
been,
a lot.
okay, so have you worked with any galleries yet? Are you looking to work with galleries?
But I am. Yes, I have been. I actually completely just did a complete change as far as the type of art that I'm doing, and studying the different forms within this past year and a half, to work towards getting into galleries.
And that's another thing that the audience needs to consider when you are pricing your artwork, is if you're going to have your work on consignment, you're going to work with galleries. And we talked about this when Thumbprint was on here, is the gallery commission. And the gallery commission, it can vary, but I think that the kind of median industry standard is around 50%. Now, I guess that depends on your relationship, what you can negotiate in your contract, but 50-50 is pretty standard. So it's like, if
he had it lower. I mean, don't steer Rue down the wrong way right there. He was saying like 30 to 50. So on the
I have to say though, when I started working with that gallery and they told me 35%, I was very surprised that it was that low, because I've dealt with a lot of galleries. I've had conversations with a lot of galleries, and it is oftentimes higher. That they are on the very generous side towards artists. And not to say that there aren't some galleries that are, but because of the cost of overhead and operation, a lot of times it is a 50-50 split. So if you do have a method where your pricing is based off of, whether it be time and materials or square footage, you're going to need to weigh in that variable of, are you going to have to give up 50% of that? Because if you're going to have to give up 50% of that, that could change what those numbers in terms of your profit mean to you, because it may take away your entire profit.
That's a lot to consider.
A lot to consider. You gotta write some notes down, Rue.
I am.
You gotta take those notes. There you go.
I've literally been writing this whole time.
Right. Hey, so I got to bring this up to Michael. So if you guys don't follow Michael on social media, go follow Michael. Of course, follow
my OnlyFans. I need more people on my OnlyFans.
Yes. Okay. OnlyFans. Well, I can only imagine what stuff. I'm not following his OnlyFans, but I can only imagine what's on there. But anyway,
I feel like you don't really support me then.
Yeah, I'm not following yours, dude. That's all you. All power to you. I'm not doing that. Anyways, so I thought it was hilarious. He did a post. You did a post where it was something like and I was gonna bring it up earlier, but I just kind of popped in my head again, where it was like finding a way to pay for rent or something like that, and it was like artwork, and then it had like butt cheeks and one of the things, and like one of the things, or check mark next to butt cheeks, whatever. And there was this older gentleman that commented on it with like yum or something like that, and I was like, oh man, Michael knows what he's doing. He's building that database up.
I mean, I'm trying. Like the art game, it's a hustle, and I think that from the outside looking in, you see artists. You may see someone like me, that I'm doing this on a professional level, and you may be like, "Oh, he's successful. He must make a lot of money." Or Rue, got a big audience who's doing this for a living. He must be super successful. But success can mean different things at different times, and the money can really fluctuate as an artist. Like I have had months. I'll just be very candid and honest here. I've had months where I have sold $40,000 plus worth of art, and I have had months in a row where I sold $0 worth of art. So it's something where you have to learn to humble yourself, because you have these periods of great feast and you can start to build an ego and you can start to think, oh my God, I'm going to be a millionaire. And I hope that for you. I pray for you. I hope that you can have that. I want you to have that success. But there are ups and downs. It's a roller coaster game being an artist sometimes. And the goal is sustainability. So that's my goal is, I can live without, I mean, of course, I'd love more $40,000 months. I'd love to hit $100,000 months and all that. But I would almost sacrifice that to have a little more consistency and a little peace of mind within the realm of this dream. And so that's why in pricing my art, I also take into consideration the e-commerce side of things. Like I'm going to sell prints of my work. And so you need to evaluate the pricing of your originals versus the pricing of your prints to make sure that that's in alignment and that makes sense for people. And I try to work with these licensing deals to bring in that secondary and passive income. And then if you can cultivate social media and build success there, at various times, like earlier this year, there was a period where the Facebook and Instagram bonuses were very generous. I remember there was a month or two where I made $2,000 off of the Reels bonus. Like I was like, shit, I'm paying my rent off of Facebook and Instagram alone. I'm good. I'm set. But then they decided to cut that off, and then that dropped to like $50. And so it's like, like I'm grateful for the $50, but the $50 doesn't pay the rent. And then the economy got hit and stuff too. So it's like sometimes if you're having that great success, keep planting your seeds and make sure you're tucking some stuff away so that you can have this be a sustainable model for you. Because art, unlike many other industries, it does have a lot of ups and downs. And unlike any other industry, there's not always a rhyme or a reason to sales in the art industry. Because my background is in sales. I worked in the sign industry for a long time, did very high level sales. And I learned kind of how to navigate sales and the rules and whatnot and how to be successful in sales. And all those rules kind of went out the window when it came to artwork. So what works one day may not work the next, and what doesn't work one day may work the next. So it's really a long game and just a commitment to it. And if you find that your pricing is not working, adjust it. So a lot of times people will say like, oh, I don't want to start selling my work because I don't really know what I'm doing. Just do it. Just start somewhere. If you need to, just pick a freaking, throw it at a dartboard. Start somewhere. See if that works for you. If that number that hit the dartboard doesn't work for you, you can adjust it. You can change it. And that's perfectly okay.
What's your thoughts on that, Rue? Saw a lot of facial
agree.
reactions, kind of like.
I agree. Just completely
okay.
throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there. That's what I did. I literally just threw myself out there. And since then, I've been painting since 2000. When did I have my hand surgery? Since 2016. That was when I had my first hand surgery. So I've been painting since then. And yeah, it's just been a learning journey. So if you don't start somewhere, you're never going to learn.
Is it your painting hand?
Yes. It was actually, I smashed it, working on a hub. I was an all-wheel vehicle mechanic in the Army. So I injured my hand and I had to have, a few hand and wrist surgeries for correction.
Has your art gotten better or worse?
It was worse. At first, I couldn't, draw correctly. And then my therapist, actually, at the time in the military, Dr. Corkins, I absolutely love her. She was the one who suggested that maybe I should paint because I was a little depressed about it. I also used to play piano, and I couldn't play piano anymore either. My hand cramps up. So it just kind of felt like, this injury took a lot of my, loves away from me at the time. So she was like, well, why don't you try painting? You don't have to hold the paintbrush as much, and, you just kind of flow with it. And it just kind of started from there.
So you started painting after the injury. So you had not painted before. Okay. So
Nope.
You didn't have to adapt your method, so to speak. You kind of just started after the injury. So it was kind of like you just worked with what you had.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that maybe any limitations in dexterity or motion
Yes.
to work in such a way and have those stuck with you, or as you mended, did you transition your stroke, so to speak?
I just kind of roll with it. I can't even say I necessarily transition. I just kind of learn to work with it. Even now, whenever my hand does hurt, I'll put my hand brace on, or either I'll put my hand compression glove on. I usually take it off when I make content so people don't see it. But I put that on and I keep going. Sometimes I mess up a lot of paintings. They don't always come out how I want them to, but I keep going until it comes out exactly how I need it to. I've learned to actually paint with my left hand, so that I can, get the curve in, or, if I need to use a smaller, more fine paintbrush, I use my left hand. So yeah.
I love that. And we talked a bit about that last week on the show when we had a trauma therapist on, and we were talking about how really when you're making artwork, don't even worry about the good or the bad or the aesthetics. Just share your story. And if you're honest in your story, there's beauty there. So if you have a little itch in your motion, allow it to show through. Like I have Tourette's and that shows through in my brushstroke, but it's a part of my signature brushstroke. It is my distinguishable style that people know me by. So your voice, your unique voice, that's what makes you you, and put that in the art. And I love that you mentioned the left hand too, because that's something that I do sometimes. Is it's like sometimes we want to control things. And so sometimes if you just open yourself up to breaking the rules or going with a different flow, it can just open up brand new channels for you and allow you to see the world in a completely different light. And you mentioned that. Oh, go ahead, Vinnie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, being because you said you just started in the art world like a couple years ago. Okay, so how did you sell your first couple of paintings?
It was I had started. It was at my job on the base that I was working at the time. As soon as I got out, and I think I was just doodling. I drew my boss at the time because I could always draw. I just never painted until eventually later. And so I was just drawing him, and then he was like, "Oh, that's a nice little sketch there, gal." He was like, "You should do something with it." And then I was like, "Oh, I got paintings too." And then that was when he told me that his wife, she loved to collect paintings from artists in Fayetteville at the time. So he told me to bring some in. And I think I brought like 5 or 7 to work with me. And I left with only one that day. And it was not just him, but a few of my coworkers that ended up buying paintings. And then from there, that's when just kind of, I was like, I think I can do this.
And sometimes that can become like a core memory in your artistic journey. It's one of those experiences of like a teacher or a mentor saying like, "Oh my God, you got something there." And like, maybe you knew like, "Oh, I'd like to do this," but hearing that externally and then having somebody just say, "Oh yeah," like going in with a handful of paintings and walking out with only 1 or 2 or none at all.
Yeah.
I think that it just changes the entire trajectory of your life and puts you either on course or maybe back on course for a dream that maybe had been pushed down.
So you sell it to all your coworkers and your friends, right? And then like, do you feel, because once your friends and family buy something you made, right, they're like, okay, well, they're doing it because they like me, right? Was there a moment when you're like, okay, this random person bought one of my stuff, damn, I am good? Like, is there something like that happen or no?
I think I did not hit that until I had eventually started in Instagram. I actually had an Instagram that was mainly for my artwork at the time. And thank God this was definitely before Reels were even available. So I was just posting pictures and, tagging different tags at the time. And this tattoo artist wanted to buy a painting from me. And I think that was when I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I don't know this person. I'm really doing it.
There is something that's so flattering when you have people from different walks of life that say, hey, you made this thing and I want this. I want that to be a part of my life because it's a piece of our soul. And for somebody else, someone to connect to that, it's this feeling beyond anything else that I can explain.
I think that's, with I think most things, right? You want to, everyone wants to feel they're important, right? I think it's Tony Robbins talks about that, like the idea that most people want to feel important, and that's a way that you feel important, right? When you know that you did something that could go on, and that's something that we talked about this a little while ago, Michael. For you, it's like you're still thinking that you have the confidence, the highs of the confidence, and the lows that my stuff sucks.
Not that it sucks necessarily, but I have the periods where, so I've kind of leveled out a bit in the sense that I don't get as big of a head as I used to. There were periods of time where I used to think that I was really important, or my ego started to get big. And so I'm really grateful that life humbled me actually and brought me back down to where I am now, because now I appreciate all the little things. And there's not another artist out there that's a beginner or experienced that I think that I'm better than. We're all just sharing our stories. So I'm very grateful for that. But I do sometimes not question whether or not I have worth, but maybe question where I am on my journey, or what I'm doing, not necessarily wrong, but what I'm doing that is not getting me on the course that I ultimately want to be on. And I understand that the course that I want to be on, it's a hard course to reach because I have big, lofty dreams. There's a lot of things I want to do. I set very, very high expectations for myself. And I know that it's going to require a lot of sacrifice and a lot of dedication, but I have made the sacrifices. I have been dedicated. I have been willing to die on my shield, to be homeless, to do whatever it takes to prove that this is possible, to show other people that you can make this work. And so I feel like I'm doing the right things. So I don't feel like I'm owed it, but I feel like I am very close. And as I have said for a long time, lost is always just a step away from found. And I feel like I am so close to just unlocking the doors to all these things that I have envisioned, but I haven't quite hit it. And I want to hit it. So when times do get slow, I start to question myself a little bit of like, you know, what could I do better? What am I doing wrong? What am I missing here?
You think the same way, Rue?
I do. I have those thoughts a lot, but yeah. I just kind of try to recenter myself as best as I can and remember what my goals are. And I just keep going. I literally lie to myself every day. Well, actually, it's not a lie, but I tell myself that I am unstoppable. And I repeat that all the time. I tell my daughter to repeat that even when she's feeling, you know, a little low about herself. And we talk about that. But sometimes, even if you don't feel it, fake it until you make it. And I just keep going. And I remember my goals.
The one thing that I always think about, well, I don't think about it all the time, but it pops in my head every once in a while. I remember I interviewed this gym owner, right? And he was telling me, he goes, you know what? Some of those bodybuilders, right, the up on stage, fitness people like that, he goes, those are some of the most insecure people you're ever going to come across, even though they have like some of the best physiques.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's just so crazy to think of like it's a pinnacle of like, oh my gosh, like a chiseled body up there. And you're like, those are the most insecure people. Like, I mean, so it's like we all have our insecurities, right? I mean,
Vinnie, you go onto the art threads and there will be people that bash people's art. I won't even bother to comment on anything that is fitness related, because you can have somebody bench pressing 700 plus pounds and there's going to be some asshole on there that benches 135 judging that person's form. I will not go near any of the fitness conversations whatsoever.
It's a trip. I mean, it's just, I mean, but like, it's great that you have those affirmations. I mean, yeah.
Well, and for all the artists out there, I think that this is the very real side of making a living as an artist, is pursuing this as a career. And the secret to success that I tell people is, it's very simple. You keep going and you don't quit. Because sadly, most people will quit. And if you don't need to be the best. You just need to be the person that doesn't quit. And if you just keep going, all these other people along the way are going to just be jumping off the boat. And I wish that they didn't, because I am not looking for an easy road. I'm not trying to push anybody else down. I want everybody to be their best. I want to have to push myself to be better. But sadly, most people are going to quit when it gets hard. And that's where the fitness ties in too. Like when you have that fitness mentality of, this is supposed to hurt. This is supposed to suck. It's not that, you know, masochistic or whatnot. It's just like, I am conditioning myself to the pain so that I can work through on the difficult days. And again, it ties to fitness, it ties to mental health, it ties to the art. It's all tied together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Rue. Oh, go ahead, Vinnie.
I'll say so. I know before we got on, Michael was telling me that you were a little, I don't know what the right word would be, a little scared or a little kind of uncertain of how the podcast go. How you think you're doing? We're kind of like an hour into this platform.
Well, don't put her
How
on
you
the
think you're
spot,
doing?
Vinny.
Oh, I'm just curious. I mean, what do you think, girl? You doing good?
Honestly, I love the podcast. I feel like I could have definitely brought a little bit more energy considering I am a high energetic person. But I'm also I'm afraid to, talk a lot. I think a lot of artists, that's why we turn to art, because we're more expressive through our artwork, at least for me. So it's just, this is new for me.
Don't you know? Don't be afraid to talk. The funny thing is like sometimes I'll listen to like stuff I say, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, man, that's like an idiot. And then you go, you know what? Hey, there's someone else out there that listens to that. They didn't know what you talked about, know what you said, and so don't even worry about it. You said, Michael?
And you're absolutely right, Rue, though, about a lot of artists. And I mean, myself included, I'm actually a big time introvert, but I realized that if I was going to make my living doing this, I was going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And so, just like when you approach galleries, at first you may hear some no's. Like I have to hear probably 30 no's before every yes, but you condition yourself to hearing the no's, and then it hurts a little bit less each time. You're like, okay, well, that door closed, but it just allows me to move in the direction of the one that's going to open. And so it's why I went into sales too after art school, because I was like, well, you know what? I'm kind of shy. I don't really know how to speak or to present myself. I don't know how to do these things. So I'm going to work on what I feel are my deficiencies so that I can be a one-man show, so that I can, if I need to, I can do everything on my own. Of course, like the goal is to eventually delegate stuff so that I don't have to just drive myself fucking crazy. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But I wanted to learn all the skills so I could at least appreciate and understand how to do all the aspects of the business. And so I think that is, and I think that ties with the talk for today. I think that's one of the things that holds up a lot of artists. I think that there are a lot of tremendously talented artists out there that are maybe just afraid of putting themselves out there, whether it be doing the social media part, whether it means putting a price tag on their work, whether it means handling the sales of the work, because if you don't have a gallery manager or an art dealer or something of that nature, you may have to do it on your own. And even myself, when people ask me, well, how much does that cost? Sometimes, I have a price in mind, but I don't want to scare them away. So I'm like, well, what works for you? What works for you? So sometimes I'll throw it back at people. And so, that's kind of the cool thing though, is that it allows the conversation to always be personal, but getting to that personalized state can be difficult for some artists, because sometimes we may have to do a little more of that face-to-face communication than we may feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And that is the benefit, I have to say, of when you can find a gallery manager that represents you well, that maybe you can take a little bit more of a back seat and focus on the creative aspect of things. Because as artists, a lot of times, most of us are just like, yeah, I don't want to do sales. I just want to make work. I don't know anybody that really, well, there's got to be some people out there, but even myself included, if I could just make the work, and I was thinking about that earlier today, if I could just make the work, I'd be a happy camper. Like, I want to spend more time actually making work, because I spend far more time on the social media aspect and on the business side of things than I do on the actual studio time. The studio time is a small part of the total experience.
Do you think there's any artist, and like I don't know what you got, Milli Vanilli or whatever back in the day, right? That was voicing whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. You think there's any artists that actually don't do their own art, but they're just really good at social media and they portray that they're the artists?
There's an artist I saw the other day. There's a couple of artists like this. There's one artist that does these imitation Rothko pieces, and they basically say like written on them, like, I'm a fake Rothko or something like that. Okay. So I don't want to say that it's quite this, but it's kind of like parody off of another well-known artist type of thing.
But they're still painting it, right?
I believe so. So it's an intelligent marketing gimmick for sure.
I mean, because that could be like a partnership. Let's say, like, I mean, again, we're going back to the idea, right, that like sex sells and that kind of stuff, right? But let's say you don't think highly of yourself, but you're a really good artist, so you partner up with someone that's social media butterfly and have them kind of be the artists, and you're giving the pieces through them. I don't know. It'd be crazy.
That's like, that's epic. If somebody's like really
like they give their work to somebody else and have it's a smart strategy.
Like almost like a ghostwriter, like they have
exactly.
Yeah, that would be.
I feel like you're contemplating this.
Yeah.
Because I am.
Moody, come here.
But I think that you could be onto something there, because it's like, hey, if the artwork stands for itself, then the art stands for itself, and what does it matter the face that's presenting it? It's like any brand that's selling a product. Is the person that's presenting it really the person that's creating the product? No, that's just the face of the company type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's something that honestly that's like worth an entire conversation of itself that I think we should get into at some point. And I think if we scale that back a few levels, you're talking a little bit about more of like the realm of collaboration. And so that's one of the things that I've really tried to do, is collaborating with ladies like Autumn that I work with on OnlyFans, stuff like that, because she's got such an audience. And I told her when we first started working together and doing some painting collaborations, and I started mentoring her a little bit with her art, was like, hey, can you throw one of my paintings just in the background on one of your live feeds? Like, I don't even need to see it, but can you just do it? And she's like, oh yeah, no problem. And I was like, so sometimes you do just got to get the visibility. And sometimes, if you can find creative avenues to put it out there, it can definitely help you sell the work, because I think that that's another big part of the conversation, is something we can dive into in the last bit of time that we have, is ways to market your art. Because I think that that's a big part, because it's one thing to put a price tag on it, but selling it is a completely different thing.
Well, I mean, also too, right? I mean, like, let's say someone that's making like a movie or something like that, put your art in the background of the movie.
I've been trying to do that for a long time. I've been trying to reach out to people that specialize in staging artwork.
That'd be cool.
And a lot of times with that stuff, it just comes down to knowing the right person in the industry to get the foot in the door. It's so tricky to do that, but I've wanted to do that for a long time. That's actually one of my bucket list goals, is to have my work just like in the background for a movie type of thing.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that, Rue? What
methods are you using to promote your work? Are you using any, like, you're doing the reels? So it's, and if that's working for you, then that's working for you. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
I apologize. Could you repeat the question? My dog Luna is just very needy sometimes. She's supposed to be an emotional support animal, but I feel like I support her more emotionally than anything.
So what methods of marketing or promotion are working for you, or what methods and promotion types are you looking into, or would you like to explore?
Honestly, so the very first video that I had posted, that I went viral to your sound, someone sent me a video, and it was literally the turnaround method. And I've just been doing that ever since. And I guess it's, in a sense, it's a little bit of using sexuality. But at the same time, it's like, well, this is my everyday clothes. I just paint in this.
Exactly.
So it's, I can't even say I necessarily have a strategy. I just kind of kept going with what was working. But I did speak with an actual marketing agent this past week. So hopefully that'll help me. I'll have more of a structure and know what I'm really doing and what else can work. But I've just been doing that. And then I also have my stretching videos. Now that I have been using my sexuality purposefully, just walking into the video, because it's like, hey, just come over here, here's some stretching routines for you as well. And oh yeah, buy some art, because they're also going to be like, oh, she's stretching, let's look on the page. Oh, she also has art. And then adding the products, oh, that's been amazing for me. But I just been using what works, and it works.
So what's the ratio, okay, of people sliding into your DMs that are looking to purchase the properties compared to they're trying to, hey, what's up, Rue? How you doing? She thinking it through?
I just don't even bother with my DMs because
Is it that bad?
honestly, yeah.
Everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I imagine for a woman, the amount of inappropriate DMs is probably significantly higher than a guy would ever receive.
And you kind of have to honestly weed through because it's always, I love your artwork. And then you're like, okay, this could be a possible sell. Let me go ahead and interact. Thank you so much. And then you go from there. And then all of a sudden it's, I want to get to know you.
And we talked with Autumn about that because Autumn was, she's one of the most popular girls on OnlyFans, but she's trying to move into making art a full-time thing. And so she and I had talked about strategies, and she thought that, and we agreed that, hey, if you've got an audience of over 1 million people, use that to kind of shift and build an audience for your art stuff really quickly. But she was noticing that a lot of people would go over to the art page and they would do the same thing. They'd kind of feign interest in the art, but it was just to try to backdoor and talk to her on a personal level type of thing. And then it's like, well, geez, now I've invested this time and this isn't going anywhere because that's not what I'm here for.
Yeah. So I found what works is if you just don't respond. They can't say that you ignored them. And then sometimes they'll go ahead and buy a piece or, purchase a print or, a shirt or something like that. But I just don't open up the messages. It makes it hard because sometimes I do think about like, oh, this person could really want to buy something, but, I'm choosing not to respond because it's that fear of where is this going to go? And then, I hate to be rude. And so even turning someone down, I feel bad. So it's just like, I'm not here for that. I'm just here for art.
So do you even read the stuff anymore? Or do you basically not even go into direct message things on the social media stuff?
If it's more than one message and I can't see the first little half, then I won't open it. But if I can read the first little bit, then yeah, I'll read it without opening the message all the way.
I'd be so intrigued to see how many of the guys that are messaging you and they buy a piece and they go, hey, I bought a piece. Now can you talk to me? Thinking that because they bought the piece,
sir,
they should be able to talk.
I've had commissions where they'll do the deposit. We'll go through the whole process. I'll finish the painting. And then as soon as I'm thinking it's over, I'm about to mail your painting. Or sometimes, if they're local here in Atlanta, we'll do a pickup. And then it'll be like, boom, okay, well, can I get it for during dinner? And then I'm like, well, no. Yeah. And then once I'm like, no, let's do and then they just go ghost. And then I don't, yeah. And then you never hear from them again. It's just like, or I've had someone tell me, well, why am I buying the painting then? And it was just like, well,
damn. So they thought that it was a painting and something else.
Yeah, huh? Like a 2-for-1 special.
Oh my gosh.
You know what? Even as a guy, though, I have had that happen with some women collectors, guy collectors and women collectors with expectations that they set that I don't know where. I mean, I know where they came from, but there was nothing to give the impression that. So and that's what happens sometimes when you handle your own sales. So I want to ask you, so do you have a website or an e-commerce platform, or how are you doing your sales? Is it just by direct message type of thing?
No, I do have a website, but most people, even though the link is there, and whenever I used to have it set up that way, but whenever you send me a DM, an automatic link to my website sends. But they still would ask, how do I get to your website? And then I'm looking in the message like, it's literally right here. But I do have a website. Yes.
And sometimes, particularly with art, because it's such a personal thing, sometimes people do like to have that personal connection, which I can respect and appreciate if it's genuine and the intent is in the right place. Because it is the reason why some people are willing to pay more. It's the reason why the guy I was talking to the other day was like, hey, I want to make sure you get full value. It's because of the personal connection, and people are investing in us. So part of me understands that. So for a long time, in terms of pricing and selling art, I had the big debate of if I even wanted to have click and purchase type work available, or if I wanted people to always have to message me so that I could have a conversation, so I could work back and forth to find like, okay, you can't afford this, but maybe we could do terms, and what terms work for you, so I could really customize it. But there are collectors that just want to go purchase the work and have no words spoken. Like there have been some people that purchase something and I just would send them a message of like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and get this over to the creator and he's going to package it up and then I'll get it out next week. And they didn't say anything, but I could kind of tell they were like, why the hell are you calling me? So, some people are just, like to operate differently in terms of relationships. So these are interesting things because the buying market for art, it's an entire spectrum. It's all types of people with all types of backgrounds, with all types of expectations, some realistic, some unrealistic. And so I think that just reiterates that ultimately how you price, how you sell your work, it comes down to you, what you want to do, and what works for you. So what works for one artist may not work for you, and what doesn't work for one artist may work for you. So you just got to put yourself out there. You got to try, take that first step. And if it doesn't work, step back and pivot. You can pivot. You can change all the time. But if you don't start putting yourself out there, you're just taking away days that you could be out there and experience you could be gaining.
Man, if you're listening to us on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts or one of those platforms up there, you're missing out on all these facial expressions that Rue's throwing out this whole episode. It's like a guessing game of all right, what is she thinking with this? Does she agree with Michael? Does she think he's an idiot? Does she have a backstory to go? It's the best, Rue.
But that's the fun thing about with our show too, is it's like, even with any one of us talking about our experience or our advice or our guidance, nobody else needs to agree with it. Like this is just a platform for us to share our experiences and kind of what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and help people navigate their own path. So our platform, unlike many others, it's not like hey, buy our program and in 4 steps we're going to tell you how to sell 100,000. There are so many of those stupid ass programs on Instagram that I see and I'm like, who buys this stuff? Like, does somebody really spend money on that? But you mentioned like that you were talking to a marketing person, and for a long time, like I did my marketing stuff in terms of social media and stuff. And then I finally was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to manage this. I had the sales coming in, so I wanted to delegate a little bit more. So I tried out, I think I tried at least 2 or 3 different marketing agencies that were like, hey, you're not doing this right. And if we do a post like this and we use these metrics and whatnot, and we do this and implement this, this is going to totally blow up your sales. And I have to say, with the 3 or so marketing agencies I tried, they were all absolute dog shit, because I just threw away so much money, because it was like, even like the ads that I was paying for that would run on Instagram and stuff like that, you'd have to give such a high percentage plus the labor for them to create the content. Your content wasn't better. The ads weren't reaching as many people because I was having to give such a high percentage to the agency. And ads back in the day, you used to be able to get a pretty sizable reach for every dollar spent. The reach now is not that great. So, I encourage people, try things out, but always be cautious and overcommitting with any of these contracts that you sign with, even with galleries, with agencies, any of this stuff. Make sure you read through. You may get burned a time or two before you learn your lesson. But if you ever get burned by an agency or by a gallery, learn the things that work for you. And just as importantly, learn the things that don't work for you, because nobody is ever going to care about your business. And nobody's probably going to ever be able to present your business better than you.
You want to know something? It's funny that you say that, because after our conversation, I was like, you know what? I could just do this stuff myself. I literally was like, I just need to set aside the time. I've gotten myself this far. You just have to have some patience. But yeah, I was like, I can do this stuff myself. And then I didn't really like the direction that he was trying to go either. So I was like, that's not me. But I was just.
You scaled your Instagram page more in the past month than I have in the past 10 years. I'd say you're doing a pretty damn good job on your own. So, like if it's working, I'm not going to say don't open yourself up to the possibility of other things that could work. But I would say that you're doing the things that are absolutely working. And if you've got the time and energy and you can kind of figure the stuff out yourself, I think that because, when you start spending like $500 to $1,000 a month, like a good chunk of that's going to go to them versus the ad itself. Whereas if you want to just try stuff out, you can try it out on your own, run the ad yourself. And then if you feel like the ad's not working, you can actually cut it off. Whereas the agency is just going to let it run through and be like, oh, we got to learn the data. If you start feeling like the money's just blowing through, that's the cool thing about Instagram and Facebook is you can just shut it off. And there have been many times that I tried something thinking it was going to work. And when I realized it wasn't catching right away, I was like, nope, we're going to just dump this and we're not going to let it run all the way through.
Well, Rue, we're getting close to the end of the time. If people are listening and they're looking to learn more about Rue or where they can buy their stuff or the best way to slide into your DMs, no, what's the best way to get more information?
Yes. My Instagram is really_Rue. And my website is ruerussell.net. Please check out my work. I also have prints and hoodies and shirts and purses on there for the ladies. And yeah, follow me on Instagram and on TikTok.
Hey, Rue, the piece that's in the background on YouTube right now, I catch a very Mondrian vibe to it. Is that an artist that you like, or is it just coincidental?
I think it's just coincidental.
Okay.
Do you know who Mondrian is?
I do not.
Perfectly okay.
Oh, no, don't worry. I mean, I've done that before too. Where people told me, "Go, hey, you remember so and so?" And I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. And then I give them more time. They go, "Are you sure you don't know this?" And then you're like, I know. They go, and then finally I go, "Okay, yeah, sure, yeah, I know that person." I was gonna leave it alone, but I had that feeling that you didn't know what he was talking about.
No, I absolutely, I did not.
But that answers the question though, because I was curious if it was just coincidental. But no, it reminds me very much of an artist that's a very famous artist in art history. I can see the art connection to that.
How do you spell the name?
Let's see if my brain works since my accident. Mondrian would be my guess right now, but if I'm completely off, apologies. But so selling your artwork, again, for all of you listening, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Ultimately, you decide the value of your work. But we'd love for you to join the conversation, share your thoughts, share your methodologies. I know I dropped some stuff on Threads and on Facebook, kind of opening up the dialogue and the conversation. I've also got some other talks right here on YouTube. You can find basically through the same page. So I'd love for you to check that out. And then, Rue, I appreciate you trying my audio that led me to then finding you. And since you are doing so well now, I would love nothing more than for you to pluck a few of my other audios and help me. But nothing makes me happier than seeing another artist thrive, do really well. And I see you doing really good things. And I mean, you've blown past me on Instagram and I'm nothing but proud. I think that's so cool. And, you found something that works for you. And when you have something working for you, a lot of times that's a good opportunity to find other things that can work for you. So when things start spinning in the right direction, run with that growth. When things get difficult, learn some lessons, work your way through it. Don't quit. It is possible. And all of you out there, you may feel like, you know what? I haven't sold any of my art. I'm not going to try to sell my art because I don't think anybody will buy it. You never know. There's a lot of times that I finish a piece and I think, this is okay. I don't know that anybody would actually buy this. That's oftentimes the first piece that sells in a show or something that sells right after me finishing it and posting it. And sometimes I'll finish pieces and I'll be like, oh, this is one of my best pieces. Somebody's going to buy this right away. And sometimes I'll have that piece sit on my shelf for a decade. So you never know. Just put your heart, your soul into what you do and take some chances. It is absolutely possible. And I believe that you can sell some work.
And guys, please subscribe. If you're listening to this right now, if you're listening to the podcast, Avenue of It, YouTube, we try to do this on Thursdays around 3 p.m. Pacific. Usually we try to drop the actual podcast on Mondays sometime right there. So that's kind of the flow of it. But if you want to hit us live, usually it's on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Pacific. Thank you. Go find Rue. Thank you. Subscribe, share, and tell everyone. Bye.
Thank you for having me.